Welcome to ARKTOBER 2025, the spookiest season of the year. I am one half of the blood-sucking Blanchard brothers. My name is Noah, and Gavin is not to be seen. He has disappeared into the night. So I have called upon another child of the night, Mr. Sunshine Mayfield, to get us in the spooky spirit. How are you, sir?
I'm so good. I'm so good. I'm not going to do that. You and Gavin have the market cornered on that, and I'm not even going to attempt.
We do. I had thought about, broaching another accent given the topic of this episode, but I don't know if we have any Italian listeners. If we do, they probably will not be listeners after this episode because we are going to butcher some names because we are here to talk about Giallo, the
Giallo,
Giallo genre featuring
prego.
yes. Uh when we're gonna have some fun. But before we do that, before we start breaking down this genre that has become kind of a new favorite of ours, kind of the final, not the final frontier, but if you've been in the horror game for a minute, eventually you're like, what's going on over here? I keep
Yeah.
hearing about these things. And once you dive in, you know, you got you're gonna have a good time, we hope. We don't
So
know.
it makes me
Uh
think of this is the kid from 30 Rock that's also on Forgetting Sarah Marshall,
Big
um,
Brer.
Jack McBrayer. His little line in Forgetting Sarah Marshall when he's talking about the Veronica Mars spoof that they have on that, where he's just like, it mixes the sex and
Sex
the
and the
violence, and I
Violence.
like it.
For sure.
But yeah,
Yes. A lot of sex and violence and exploitation and complicated questions coming your way. But before we get into any of that, October is not quite in full swing, but we are in the early days. We had our Gateway Horror episode, which you were kind enough to host for us. It was a little chaotic, but hopefully people got some good recs out of that. We've officially transitioned into the adult portion of the show, the adult portion of the month. Um, I am curious. I
yeah,
know you start way earlier than I do. You start back in
typically.
September. I usually try and hold the floodgates until October and then it's open season. But have you been watching anything unrelated to the topic at hand to start your marathon or, back into September?
Non-giallo movies.
Yes, non-giallo horror movies for October before
I will
we.
give the rundown of non-giallo horror movies that I've watched. Finally got around to the Vortelock, 2023 Marionette Villain, which
Did
is
not
like,
did not get that from the trailer, but
yeah,
even more
you're just like, oh,
enticing.
this thing is a giant puppet. Um, and I really dug it.
Hell yeah.
I just tonally, it's this weird, ethereal kind of like out in the woods, Dutch film. I think it's Dutch. Anyways, um, and it's the Vortelock is a story that goes back a long ways. Essentially, it's about this kind of vampire slash zombie that comes back and after leaving and kind of takes over its family and it's just a vibe the whole time. And as much as you'd want to say like the puppet doesn't work, both thematically it does, and also visually, you're kind of like it is eerie enough that it is just unsettling, and
Hmm.
it has such this like way of that it could be uncanny and just could be like off-putting, but I think it fits the vibe and the theme so well that it you kind of buy into it. Maybe you don't, and then you're not going to like this movie. I
Okay.
think if you can find yourself on that wavelength, the Vortelock is the one that I would go with.
And that is
Um,
available on Shudder slash AMC Plus, I
I
believe, right
I
now.
think so.
Again,
Even
we
maybe
shout this out every year, but if you're not subscribed to Shudder, this is like the 1 month to do it. You can jump in and get a free trial, but the sheer access to a lot of the titles we're going to be talking about and just stuff you haven't seen uh, cannot be overstated. So yes, check out Shudder, AMC Plus, whatever. Jump in for a
sponsor
month.
us.
Yes.
Yeah. 28 Days Later rewatch. Don't need to talk about that. That's just a phenomenal movie, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in the.
It's already come up on multiple podcasts this year, and I'm sure we have to reference it again when we get to our year-end pods because there's part of that franchise that came out this year. Yes, we can move right along.
Dangerous Animals. I finally watched.
That's
Um,
still on my list. This is the shark serial killer movie.
That's right. Brought to you by the
My
man who
my
brought you the
weapon
love
is a
handle.
shark.
Yeah, the weapon is Byrne, Sean Byrne. I like him enough that I should know his name perfectly. But Sean Byrne, uh, The Loved Ones, which is a wild watch if you haven't ever seen it, and The Devil's Candy, which I think is an underrated horror gem with Ethan Embry that is mix of like metal music and occult stuff that I think is just like
I
a really fun time.
co-sign both of those for sure.
But Dangerous Animals also probably my least favorite of the three, but still good. The dude has got himself a repertoire that I think people can vibe with.
Nice.
Finally watched Terrifier 2. Um, I don't get it. I don't get the franchise. Art is genuinely an interesting character to see on screen.
And
He does
then and
not
then
buy
I
he does
ran
not
out
buy
of
two
things
and
to
a
say.
half hours.
And then
I don't know what
yes,
we got to say. Like I
gotcha.
just it's not there for me. And I'll watch three at some point, I'm sure, but maybe next year.
I have
Um,
not broached into any of those films or the All Hallows Eve or any of the early ones. Like I just
I didn't like
complete blind spot.
Terrifier. Terrifier 2 is better, but but
Terrify
is
3 is
I don't know.
good.
I
And then
don't
if he
know.
keeps going, do you eventually love it when they get
It's
to like 7 or
it's
8?
like at a 3 or 4, so maybe three. Like I just I don't know.
A slow progression up instead of down.
Yeah.
That could be interesting.
I watched Mad God. Stop motion animation came out in 2021.
From the great Phil Tippett. Yep.
That's Tippett's masterpiece and life work that he's been working on for apparently like 30 years. Um, that's another one that's just straight vibes, and the vibes are great. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know if I
mean,
ever
well,
want to watch it again.
not yeah, like not great as in like, oh, I'm having a great time, but just like how the hell did one guy do this, basically?
The
Or
way that they built out this whole underworld,
yeah,
it just looks incredible. I mean, just the sheer artistry of it all. It's a gives it up a four. It's like a 4 out of 5 immediately because of that.
love it.
Rewatched Red State, Kevin Smith's horror movie that's not Tusk. I think it works. I don't think it works as well as I thought it did when I was 22.
Hmm.
Um, but it's still, that first part is still deeply unsettling. The back half loses me a little bit more than I think when I was a kid. I was like, or younger, I was just like, oh yeah, shoot 'em ups. But I do like the monologue of John Goodman at the end.
Yes.
And then I finally watched The Surfer from this year, Nicolas Cage's movie.
I don't think we've actually discussed this since you watched it.
Have you seen it yet?
I have not caught it yet.
Overall, it's another one of those ones where if you can get on its wavelength to dumps, um, it'll work for you. I think Cage plays his part well. It is this surreal kind of dive into tribal toxic masculinity that I think really does work as a conversation piece. But I think that there are going to be some people who like, depending on how you set yourself up for it, you may not. It's horror adjacent. It's horror, but like we've had this conversation. So much of what people consider horror adjacent, we just throw at the under the umbrella because we're like, no, that
Yeah,
is
I
spooky
feel
and unsettling. And
well, given that you seem to kind of respond to this one, I'm interested to reapproach it without spoiling anything. One of my Giallo picks that I think you've seen that may kind of vaguely tie into this.
okay,
I'll also say, without having seen it, I know the big touchstone for the surfer is supposed to be Wake and Fright, which I believe is available
yeah,
streaming, and
yeah,
is
yeah.
another like Australia set, uh, surreal psychological drama. Yeah, so I
And
look
then
forward to checking out. That's on Hulu right now. Where is that?
I think so. Yeah, yeah. I think you watch it on Hulu. And then I was recently on a flight and decided to do one of your boys. I did a Soderbergh double feature,
Nice.
um, with Ocean's 11, uh, because it's great. Um,
Doing quite
and
well in our 25 for 25, which is coming back, by the way, people. We just, it's Arctober. It's on pause for a moment.
and then I finally watched Presence. That dude works, man. How does
He
that
sure
man put out
does.
3 movies a year
I,
consistently?
I think we
Of
got another one like in the chamber ready to go
course we
shortly
do.
into 2026. Yeah.
And you love them all. Here's what I'll say about Presence. there's probably a lot of people who I think it kind of hit this weird, like they were expecting a haunted house story, which like kind of.
Hmm.
I think the framing device of being in the seat of the entity
The
and being
presence.
for point of view the entire time. Is that
Hmm.
what it was called? Great. Uh,
Being in the
um,
presence
being in
of
the
the presence.
presence, I think that really worked. I didn't. And anytime you do something like that and you're under a tight 90 or like 85 minutes, I think that's the sweet spot for that style of like gimmick.
Yeah.
And I think it played really well. And I think the ending is probably a little off-putting to some, just based off of like it being so abrupt. Kind of that last like hurrah that's in there. Um, but I think it worked really
I
well.
think you got to sit with the implications because I think there's a little bit to talk through there at the end in terms of what you think is going on and not necessarily something because I know people are still getting to it. It did okay in theaters. One thing I really want to shout out and I didn't talk to you about. So the dad in that film,
Yeah, this is us.
secret like if I was making the Oscars, he'd be on my supporting list. I thought that performance
It's
was like sneaky, really, really good.
it's really.
Like
Did you? I
really
never
good.
watched the show This Is Us,
Same.
but I have seen so many of its clips on Reels or TikTok because it's just clipped. And it seems like he plays a very similar role on that show at times,
Do
right?
I have to
Like,
watch This Is Us now? Because I literally was like, who is this guy? I'm like all about this guy and the
um,
daughter as well.
but he's also in this place where, not to go too far into presence, but it's
Yeah,
another like failing marriage, like figuring family life out stuff.
yeah.
And so it's a very similar role to at least what I've seen from clips. Um, and so I wonder if that's why he got cast in it, is because he's maybe really good at that.
Uh-huh.
And but he is really good at that. And the daughter is really good. I think the cast shows up well. Again, I think that there are times where you get pitched a spooky movie, and we talked about this with I Saw the TV Glow.
Yeah,
Um, and you're looking for Sinister, right? You're going to see a horror movie, and you're looking for The Ring or Sinister or um, Insidious, and you get Presence, which, and then you go, well, that wasn't scary, and you're kind of like, yeah,
yeah.
like,
There are aspects of it that I would say are disturbing, but they don't have anything to do with the presence in the
right,
house. You know what I mean? It's all about the family that's being observed and eventually, no spoilers, but there is a quote unquote villain that
for
emerges.
sure.
So
And I think all that played really well. So yeah, 7.5, 8 for me probably for Presence. I was really
right
enjoyed it.
right there with
Um,
you.
and so I think that that's one that
And again, I'll just restate he did shoot that entire thing himself with little rubber footies on so that, he didn't
he
make
didn't make any
sound. But
noise.
he
That's actually
operated his
really.
own camera. Yeah, you should see the behind the scenes footage. It's very funny.
Was it on an iPhone? Did he just do a
It is essentially like a souped up iPhone.
iPhone?
Yeah.
Well, cool. What about you? I just dominated for like 10
Oh
watches.
no, that's what I wanted. So I have been in a very, I don't know, a very funny mood and still ready to, ease into the month. So it's been straight horror comedies, dude, outside of these giallos. Uh, my big kind of kickoff, I had been waiting for it, saw the trailer a couple months ago. Found footage, the making of the Patterson Project, which is just straight up streaming on Amazon Prime now. It's a brand new 2025 movie. Uh, it is about a group of friends that decide to go make a Bigfoot horror movie in the found footage style, a totally original idea that no one's ever done before.
Sure.
Um, and how that production devolves into chaos and a lot of other stuff. It is, it's very inside baseball. It's one of those, if you've seen a lot of these movies, you'll absolutely love it. If you have any level of knowledge of like just production in general, there's just gag after gag. And then I will also say it's the scares do not come from Bigfoot, but it does eventually like it is a true horror comedy where it's like it is a comedy for a while and then it does round the corner into the horror territory, but you
Which
never
we
stop
love.
having a blast the whole time. Uh, right at 90 minutes, I believe. Just super quick watch. fun cast, re just really good banter. There's a few, again, in this, a few people I had never seen before where I was just like, who's that? It had the vibe, and I should go investigate further. It had the vibe of if the American Vandal crew made a found footage horror movie.
Okay.
That's the highest compliment I can pay it.
Which is such a it's just that's
Yes.
such a smart show. I
Yes.
love look, Jimmy Tatro, for all his broiness, he has such a way of creating just incredibly at least being a part of projects of just that are incredibly stupid.
Yes.
Like in their delivery and in what they are, and they are also deeply intelligent in terms of what they are spoofing and the knowledge that they have on what they are doing. And so like American Vandal, perfect example of just like let's take this true crime docuseries and make it really well about drawing phallic images on cars.
Right. Yeah.
And then let's take Simi Valley and this idea of the Real Housewives reality television shows and all of these communal reality TV shows that exist, keeping up with the Kardashians. And we're going to make it about four idiots
Hmm.
who are installing truck nuts on people's cars in their life. And the jokes hit, and he's just all credit to him, and the creative teams behind those two projects because I think both of them are just insanely stupid and watchable, but oh so smart.
Yeah.
And I just I'm in the bag for those types of shows right now, which is like
Absolutely.
also kind of like Friendship. We
Hmm.
reached both of us recently watched it. Maybe you further back, but
Yes, on newly on HBO, and could, is one of those, if we want to play that game, kind of a horror movie, in some
uh,
aspects. Uh
almost like a weird spiritual sibling to like I saw the TV glow, except with like
sure. Yeah.
a 40-year-old man as opposed to a high
Yeah.
school student. Um, but again,
And
deeply
and there's a
stupid.
little bit of the like reverse yuppie nightmare movie from the 90s where it's like, oh, we're all in the suburbs, everything's good, and it's like, oh, but there's this creep over here. Like this creep's ruining my life. Like there's a little bit of one of those movies trapped in Friendship as well. And it's just a
Little
cringe
stalker
comedy.
movie.
Yeah, for sure. It's there if you want it to be. I'm gonna say it counts. I'm gonna say it counts if you want to watch it this month.
It
Uh,
follows, but it's just your weird neighbor.
yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of people living in the same neighborhood as Tim Robinson would be akin to a horror movie. So or just having to spend time with him in any way, because I know he's a, you know, divisive figure. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, staying with the horror comedy vein, Idle Hands. I think we've discussed it multiple times on this podcast, but
So
still
good.
a nice nostalgia hit every time I go back to it. Great soundtrack, great fun movie. Some 90s things that haven't quote unquote aged well, but they kind of bounce right off you. They're not like patently offensive. The most upsetting thing in that entire movie is they sling a cat across an entire neighborhood and we never see it again. But
Yeah.
Bones, but I'm pretty sure Bones is fine. He was just like, I'm getting away from this hand. But yeah, always a
Is
good time.
is there any Seth Green movie you won't watch?
I mean, there's plenty I haven't seen, but he's definitely not like a avoid at all costs if he's in something, particularly in this era. I would say 90s Seth Green, pretty much co-sign everything.
I mean, Idle Hands, Devin Sawa, Seth Green, Eldon Hansen, Jessica Alba,
The Offspring.
Vivica A. Fox. You
Yeah,
just you forget that everyone is in this movie. Um, and it's so much fun.
it's a great time. Great time. And then I also finally checked out The Blackening, which I've been meaning to get to, and I picked up on a cheap Blu-ray sale at my local retailer, which I enjoyed. I thought it was super fun.
Yeah.
Nice take on a lot of the tropes. And I we talked about this off mic. One of those that I kind of was like, I wish it was either 10% scarier or funnier, but I still had a good time with it.
It works. And enough that like the I'm down to watch more um from that crew and who wrote that? Because Tim Story directed it.
Yes, and not to shit on Tim's story, but you know,
He's got
may,
a
may,
checkered past.
yeah, no, I'm just saying maybe this same script in another director's hands, maybe it is able to kind of make that leap into, like I said, 10% funnier or scarier. But he's just, he's solid. He's very workmanlike, but kind of every once in a while you wish somebody had like a little bit of house style. And I'm like, he's just one of those guys. It's just like it's just a movie. It's kind of anonymous. Uh, yeah.
Well, and it was written by Dwayne Perkins.
So that's who we want to follow
And that's
because I
and
thought
he
the script was very smart
and
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 funny.
there's a it looks like he's working on um a second sequel coming down.
Okay.
So it's
Okay.
Dwayne Perkins and Tracy Oliver. Tracy Oliver did Girls Trip. Um and so it looks like they're working on a sequel. But Dwayne Perkins also has been a fun talking head in some of the Shudder um greatest horror movie moments and things like
Now,
that.
okay, no, now that's clicking for me. And I know who you're talking about. Okay.
Yep.
Because they profiled the blackening in one of the, I think last season, if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken. Yeah. So I highly recommend checking that one out. It is available on Netflix as well. And that's pretty much it outside of our genre we're here to discuss today. So you you threw this out there. This has been
Yeah.
a growing obsession for you and your wife. So yeah, I guess let the listeners know how you got into it and what in fact is a giallo.
Yeah. So you get to a certain point, I think, when you watch spooky movies. I I always say, what are the underrated gems? What are the good ones? Because as much as we enjoy the bad ones, you also kind of get to this point where you're like, I still want to see things that I'm like, oh my God, that was good. Not just like, oh my God, that had a good set piece, but the rest of the movie is, a chore to get through.
Hmm.
Um, and there was also a time where my wife and I were going to Italy, and so we really tried to be intentional about trying to watch some Italian movies leading up to it. Um, just because that was a fun way for us to kind of get immersed in Italian
For
culture
sure. Yeah.
prior to going. And through that, you start to sit there and say, all right, here are names of movies that are coming down the pipe that are always on list of like movies that you probably haven't seen or, top 250 list. And you're like, I've never even heard of that one or whatever it may be. And so you start to kind of say, okay, these names are popping up regularly. Um, and so then you start kind of taking a deep dive on that. And then, of course, there's a little bit of like Dario Argento, who I'm sure we will talk about multiple times throughout the course of this episode. Suspiria has always been one of those ones where you're like, this is, you know, top tier horror cinema and has always been up there, kind of, maybe not always, but at least in recent years, just getting more and more recognition and getting kind of to higher status of the way that we view horror movies. And
It's
you
definitely
start
kind of
thinking,
the de facto gateway. I feel like for most mainstream people, like it's going to be the one you've heard of. If nothing
right.
else, it's the one that broke through. Yeah,
And so then you start kind of playing like, oh, I want to see who inspired that, and I want to see the other portions of Argento's catalog. And so you start taking deeper dives, and so then you go far enough, and you go, all right, we've got the giallo subgenre, which is just Italian for yellow, is based off the pulp books that these like little mystery books that were whodunits that were put out at the time, and so these pulp books had yellow covers, so they were called giallos, and that then turned into giallo cinema. And so you've got this kind of horror thriller subgenre that flourished really in the 1960s through the 80s. A lot of masked killers in black gloves, weird, strange camera angles, and elaborate murder set pieces that typically exist. And a lot of the themes kind of go on kind of critiquing systems that are existent in 60s and 80s and the fear of what's kind of coming in Italy. You get a lot that's about like people are now becoming more sexually like explorative in the 70s, and it's kind of a reaction to those things happening as well. Big neon colors and dramatic lighting. Uh, just a really kind of the hybrid genre where you get to this point where it's like it's not just mystery because the violence now has been amped up, and so you're getting more into these horror exploitative type things. So it's now just mystery and horror blended together. You have this really, a lot of times have this really interesting score that almost feels like it's juxtaposed to what's happening on screen, and it works really well. Just like hard synth rock music that's taking place, as opposed to your typical like spooky, eerie, theremin
Yeah,
type music.
we can talk about the evolution of that kind of in the 60s to 70s transition because like a lot of the earlier stuff I was watching, a lot of Ennio Morricone scores that I was like, "Oh, another one and another one and another one."
Right.
That are more traditional and old school and like starting to get a little funky and weird. And then yeah, you move into Goblin in the 70s and you're like, "What the hell is this? Nothing sounds like this." You know?
But and all of that kind of wraps up in this idea where it's these weird kind of every Giallo movie, you could equally be like, wow, this is incredibly progressive, or this is incredibly regressive, right? It's like
Right.
in either take of that of one singular movie, I think you're gonna have people who can land on that, and I think both are right. Like that's one of those weird things where you're just like, yeah, no, you're not wrong,
Yes.
or you can look at it from a different lens, and I think that there are some movies. It's funny because and we'll dive into it more and more, but like in a way, you can kind of sit there and see similarities between 60s to 80s giallo movies were at the time what kind of like early 2000s torture porn movies kind of are for us.
Hmm.
Um, a deep reaction to some big societal event that's taking place, that's going on, this evolution and change. And so there's a way to kind of sit there and say, like, this is really just feels exploitative and lacking any form of depth. I would challenge that more with Giallo movies than I would with maybe Hostel, right? Like, certainly
Right.
those exist, but like at a certain point, you just want me to watch someone going through the worst thing of their life.
Yes.
Um, and there's also, I think, way more stylization in what's going on in Giallo movies. It's typically very artistic and beautiful, which also then makes you question, like,
Well,
should this be artistic
well, I
and
was gonna say,
beautiful?
then you start to get into the territory of another thing that I'm sure you find yourself questioning when you watch a lot of these is like fetishization, which is like, do like, yes, this is artful and beautiful. Is it okay that you're making this
Like artful and
artful and
beautiful.
beautiful? So yeah, that's definitely, I don't know. I like having my buttons pushed as an audience member. I like not necessarily always being 100% comfortable with what I think the director's intention is versus how something's coming off. I don't mind going into those gray areas, and there's a lot of those in these movies. Part of that's a product of the time they were made in, and part of that's just a natural, like, again, it is an exploitation genre by nature. It is lurid, it is pulpy. Like, that is what the movies are sold on for the most part. So it's like you kind of, you know, you take a certain amount of that going in. You kind of know what you're signing up for. But to that extent, like you were saying, I think one of the things we can kind of chart is there are these kind of key ones that pop that then inevitably, spawn a bunch of imitators who are kind of maybe more in it for whatever we want to take, quote unquote, wrong reasons, where it's like, I just want to stage the craziest set piece kill ever, but there's nothing else really going on here. Um, and those are the ones I think that maybe fade to the background and ones that like once you start digging. For instance, like when you go to IMDb, they have the genre breakdowns or whatever. Broadly speaking, according to IMDb, there's only like 125 of these, like from this time period, that are broadly considered giallos. And I guess there's a few modern ones that technically get the label put onto it. But we're talking about a very concentrated period of time in a genre that like kind of burnt out, but also went on to spread its seeds amongst so many directors for the time that it was popping during.
I think, I mean, one, I think yes, and certainly there's a progression that exists here that if this movement doesn't exist, I think there are some major films that don't get made, at least not in the same way or not in the same, I don't think if you don't have this subgenre, I don't think you ever get Silence of the Lambs. If you don't have this subgenre, I don't know that you get most of David Fincher's catalog. Um, and it's not that those movies are direct ripoffs or even giallo in nature, but that style of violent murder mystery that is shocking and that
And is
Blanchard does
art
so
directed
well
within an inch of its life? Yes,
is
is
like you don't get Seven if this genre of film does not exist. You don't get. I mean, let's Manhunter is probably the original Red Dragon movie that comes out from Michael Mann before Silence of the Lambs that's still Hannibal Lecter. Brian Cox, I think, is Hannibal Lecter in that one.
correct. Yeah.
Um, I I don't know if you get that movie at all, and then I also don't think you get Silence of the Lambs at all if this subgenre doesn't exist in the state that it does. Um, and I think there's a few, there's probably a lot of claims. Like you probably, for good or for bad, we would say for bad. Others would maybe say for good. I don't think you get Nicholas Winding Refn's career of movies um,
Yeah, some people
without
would be
this,
fine
right?
with that never having
Which,
happened. I would be very
people are like,
upset. Yeah, to the point where, again, I was looking through some of his, stop and start or just straight up failed projects, and there was at least two giallos that he was supposed to like remake at a certain point in time that just never happened. So he kind of eventually got there. Maybe we'll talk about that one. But I think we've set the table uh well enough. You said you kind of want to go chronologically. I'm gonna take a wild guess, but just broadly speaking, do you have anything from the 60s?
I do. I
Well,
have
well, let's start there.
arguably the first Giallo, Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace from 1964. I think is a great starting point for anyone trying to get into the genre or at least explore it a little bit more.
This is the first image I ever saw from a Giallo movie because chronologically, in Bravo's countdown of the 101 scariest movie moments back in the day, uh, Blood and Black Lace is listed before the more iconic Suspiria, which we've already named, so I'll name it again. Uh,
Yeah.
And so, yes, the image of a white, white-faced, blank-faced, black-cloaked killer with black leather gloves, pulling off some of the most violent and stylish kills I've ever seen. I was like, "What is this?" But yes, this was truly my first exposure to the genre, even though I would not see the movie in its entirety for another 10 to 15 years. Yeah.
So if you're thinking, we are on an audio medium, so I will describe to you what's happening visually. But if you think Rorschach, Frank Miller absolutely steals, not steals, but
Alan
like pays
Moore. Alan Moore.
homage.
I don't want the
Alan
internet to
Moore,
come
thank
after
you.
you. Not
Nope,
Frank Miller. Alan
thank you,
Moore.
Alan Moore, thank you.
And Dave
You're so
Gibbons, who actually drew the character. Let's be clear.
all right. Your knowledge on that is way more than mine, so I appreciate it.
No problem.
I was thinking what Sin City. Anyways,
Yeah.
Rorschach is the killer, right? Just without, it's just this white mask and duster jacket. Um, and it's just from the very first intro. That's got to be one of the coolest movie intros I've ever seen in my life. Like opening credit sequences,
Hmm.
just stunning, right? And so you get this stuff where, brutal murder opening credits that just stylized still shots, but like are like might as well be still shots, but it's actors kind of posing throughout this fashionista house where this entire
Hmm.
movie takes place as these models are kind of getting picked off. Um, and you've just got it's just beautiful. And so you're already kind of getting teed up in this place of I, why am I so like engrossed in like the art of this?
Hmm.
Um, and you'll start to notice mostly with the films that we named that a lot of these I'm sure that are going to come up just because it ends up being kind of a theme of the genre is it's a lot of this centers around creative personalities, right? So it's authors, it's movie makers, it's sound designers, it's costume designers, and so a lot of these movies kind of take place in that space. And so you start to even question one with the very first one of Blood and Black Lace of okay, are not only are we as the people who are watching it like should we be a little put off by what's going on, but like it's also like this weird critique of the people who are making it being like are we, icky for putting this out there and being in there in the first place.
Hmm.
And so right away there's this questioning of like hey, I'm the one who's making it maybe, but you're the one who's watching it. And so like maybe we're all a little bit more hypocritical than we think we are in terms of our morality and I think that poses a really interesting question. Um This movie's got this really cool opening sequence. It's got this really brutal drowning scene in it that takes place at some
That's
point.
yeah, that's got to be the easily the most iconic in the
Um,
movie. Yes.
but it's also you want to think about like all the haunted houses that had like mannequins or fake bodies and mirrors in a room together, so you never know where like the actor is.
Hmm.
That's ripped right from here, and I think that is some of the coolest scenes where you're just like it's a room full of mannequins, and then at some point you see a mannequin move, and you're like, this is wild. So for that to be taking place in the mid '60s, I think is just fantastic. So and really you're getting your first sense of that black glove killer. Um, and it's just really stylized in a way that I think works really well. Mario Bava is a name
He's
who needs to
definitely he's definitely one of the Godfathers, if not kind of the main guy that all of this seemingly stems from. Uh, if we're gonna make a Mount Rushmore, I'm curious who the fourth is. I think I know who the three are, but I don't know if I know who the fourth is. Maybe we'll figure that out.
we'll talk about it. Yeah,
But Bava's definitely up there. To that point, I'll go over and talk about my Bava pick
please.
from a few years later, 1971's A Bay of Blood. This is where we can start to kind of jump into, and Blood and Black Lace has elements of this as well, but we start to kind of see subgenres within the giallo, and this is a giallo slasher, very proto slasher. I had always kind of heard this one reference as far as like Western audiences are concerned. Most people, we've been through this a billion times before. Most people say Halloween, but then you can dial it back when you start exploring. You're like, oh, maybe it's actually Black Christmas 4 years earlier, but that's also the same year as Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then you're like, well, actually, there's this other thing 3 years earlier, which seems extremely prototypical. So, A Bay of Blood opens, and so we're a few years into the genre at this point, and Bava is already like playing with the tropes. I will spoil the opening kill from this movie, which is an old woman in a wheelchair in an elegant mansion by the bay, uh is rolling through a doorway, and then before you know it she is noosed up and hanging, like dangling from the floor. And you've got your black glove killer there, and you're like, okay, okay, that was pretty interesting set piece, whatever. And then the gloves come off, and I'm like, why would you show me whether those are male or female hands? Like, what are you doing? And then we pan up, and then we just straight up show who the killer is, and I'm like, yo, what's going on, man? I was like, this is gonna be one shitty giallo. They already gave it away. Like, and then sure enough, silly old me, that guy gets killed. And I'm
Yep.
like, oh, okay, okay. And what proceeds to happen is basically probably the most convoluted of any of the plots you will find here. This movie has nine credited writers.
And it feels
Nine,
that way.
dude. I was gonna say, dude. I mean, obviously, we give shit to like superhero movies and blah 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 and all this stuff. It's like it's done by committee, but I'm like, nine people to write A Bay of Blood, dude. What are we doing here, man? And everybody had to get their say and like, no, this person should be the killer. I guess they're all the killer. Like,
It's almost like an anthology. Like it almost
it
plays like an
really, yes.
anthology because like you get like it's all the premise of it really is all just that like everyone wants this piece of
Yes,
land
who
that
wants
exists.
who can control the bay? Who's going to get the inheritance and kill off all of the other property owners so that they can, live in splendor by themselves. By the way, this bay, especially at magic hour, is dope. It is gorgeous. It looks awesome. But
It really does.
yeah,
And
I might kill like one or two people to keep it. I don't know if I would go as far as this movie goes.
when
Body count is very high.
it's
Very,
almost
very high.
it's just like little it just kind of goes from person to person, right? Like it's this weird Final Destination movie where like I the bay is mine, and then they
Yeah,
die, and then the
it's
person's
just
like,
yeah.
now it's
Well,
mine,
that's the
and
thing.
then
It's
they
just
die.
bad things happening to bad people.
It really is, and
Um,
it's not my favorite overall. Like
absolutely
I can
not.
I can take it or leave it.
I think it's
Um,
just a great one to check out because what I was about to transition in regards to the slasher thing, very early on we get introduced to like, hey, here's four random horny teenagers who are headed out to this abandoned house by the bay because they're here to
What else do you
party.
do?
Okay.
Right.
And so it's like, all right, we got four anonymous victims. And it's like very quickly in fairly rapid succession, all of them get picked off by an unseen killer. And every single one of those three set pieces, like really, really hits and also birth an entire American genre within themselves, which is like that is literally Friday the 13th. It's right there.
Which is what
Like
I was going to say is, as someone who, and not to lose my horror credibility, I hate the Friday the 13th franchise.
I'm right there with you.
I think it's
We are well on record. If
trash.
you want to hear praise for that franchise, you can go listen to Late Fees Waived, hosted by the brothers Blanchard, if you want to hear good things about Friday the 13th.
But it is a perfect, when they sit there and say, "Oh, Halloween was so great, we need to make our version of that," and they then go, "Great, we're gonna make Friday the 13th." It's just a worse version of Bay of Blood with
Yes,
elements of Halloween brought into it, right?
for
Like
sure.
there is probably, and that's a great example of another movie that doesn't exist without the Giallo subgenre because that also is like this who done it, right? Because until the second one, the whole supernatural aspect of it all
Hmm.
doesn't exist. So it really is this just kind of like who's doing this all ripped straight from Bay of Blood, which is, I'll give me Bay of Blood over Friday the 13th every
I
day of the
think it's a
week.
fun time, and if that is kind of your if that is the side of horror that you prefer, you've probably already seen this movie, but if you haven't, it's kind of well, again, it's proto Friday the 13th in a lot of ways. So yeah, this is one I had always meant to catch up with and hadn't until very recently, and I had a good time with it. I also think it has one of the best final gags that like fully hammers it home that it's like it's a dark comedy. Like
For sure.
you're supposed to have a good time with this. You're not supposed to be stressed out or genuinely like scared at any point. It's like again, it's bad things happening to bad people who all deserve it. There's nobody you have to feel bad for, nobody you're rooting for. It's just like greed corrupts us all. Fuck all these rich people trying to maintain their property and doing, several murders to do it. Yeah.
Which is another great point of the Giallo subgenre to begin with, right? Is there's a lot of this kind of upper class decadence that exists within this genre and this kind of push against like, don't you have enough? Or like,
Hmm.
the villains kind of come out to play in that space a whole lot. And sometimes that they're a part of that, and sometimes they're in it like
Yeah, sometimes they're
adverse to that.
defending that, and sometimes they're people who've been wronged by the power structure that are like taking it out on society. Like, yeah,
So
it can go a lot of different ways. Uh,
speaking of the ultra rich,
yeah.
we're gonna jump into uh, a little bit of we're gonna go to our first Argento,
Okay.
1975. Typically considered to be Argento's like true masterpiece. I don't know if I believe that. It's good. I have other favorites. Um, but Deep Red 1975 is so good.
Yes.
Um, and you've got this kind of moments where, and this is where like you start to see some things really take place where you start to see the outsiders kind of get represented more in this space, and not
Mhm.
always for good, but you start to see like more queer representation start taking place in this movie and things that are going on that this is where you kind of go, is this progressive or regressive? And the reality is like for the time, this is the first time these people are hitting stories in the way in a
Mhm.
similar way on screen. And then some of the time you're like, oh, but that's a very bad stereotype
Yeah.
of how that plays out. Um, and so this challenges you, but you've got Dario Argento's just the scenes that I kind of start thinking of. You've got this guy who's going and investigating these happenings. He's walking through this house to see where a kill just took place, and he's walking through this hall of mirrors and photos and frame photos. And like you watch it, and the first time you watch it, they're so close where you're like, I'm pretty sure something was in that mirror. And then you're like, maybe it was, maybe, and it's just filmed so subtly that like it really is that quick of a moment where you're like, I think maybe there was someone there.
Hmm.
they kind of reveal that, people are there, but you go back and see it on a second watch, you're like, nailed it. Okay, great. Super cool to kind of drop these faces. Just a really creepy scene. You've also got this wild doll attack that takes place.
It's
Um,
one of the strangest, scariest, trippiest, funniest, like it's everything all at once
a-
moments in
and
all
to,
of horror cinema. I love
and
that
and
scene so
again,
much.
when we talk about how these ties start making their way to other movies, like you don't get Jigsaw without that. Like
Hmm.
maybe you do, but you can tell that Jigsaw is a complete rip of that scene and expands upon it, right? It's more of an homage. It's not like he's just like I'm going to do, but like
Yeah.
it's just a callback to that, and I think that that works so well because they the thing that you kind of wish would happen in Saw movies is they just kind of like kick over the doll at some point and like be like, "What are
Right.
you doing?"
Yeah.
Um, and you get this moment. It's like, all right, cool. Doll's knocked over. That was weird. A doll wielding a knife, and then like the real thing happens, and it is brutal. Um, and I just think Argento's got this way of shooting things. This one is definitely not as surreal as some of his other projects, but it is just a really tight whodunit that I think works really well.
Yeah.
And not to give away too much, there's always like one of the things I really appreciate Giallo across the board is sometimes the whodunit is like multiple. And so I think you get into this space where it's like it's not just one, and that's how can this person be so many places at once? And so you lose a little bit of that when you go to American slashers, where it is really just like the one person for the most part, um, where you're like, how is Jason so many places?
Yeah.
And so I think that it works out really well there. It's widely regarded as Argento's masterpiece, and kind of the peak of Giallo. You start to kind of see that like we're out of the '60s, we're mid '70s, and maybe we start to tail off towards the '80s. Um, but it also just is like the spectacle of it all.
We've
I think
got
really works.
you've got Goblin in here, not like fully unleashed until Suspiria, but great score from them.
Yep.
And then also we haven't really been shouting out the Italian names, but this one I love to say. Profondo Rosso is deep red.
Is That's
And
right.
then also I should have shouted out A Bay of Blood has so many great other titles in other countries, but there's Twitch of the Death Nerve, which is amazing. It's also called Carnage in a couple places. Uh, but yeah, we should start shouting out the Italian names as we go through. A Bay of
Say
Blood
this
is
one again.
also known as, sorry, Deep Red is Profondo Rosso.
Right.
Profondo.
Not a me. Don't. This is different than the Miyazaki movie.
Correct. Yes, not Porco Rosso, Profondo Rosso. Do not make that mistake. A Bay of Blood is also known as Ecologia del Delitio. Dude, I gotta work on my Italian, but
I did Duolingo for like a year and still never got my Italian to where it needed to be to go visit.
no.
I,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was about to say Duolingo doesn't work. What is your what is your next pick?
Um, so I'm gonna we almost take a hard line into I was like, oh, Bay of Blood's a fun one. It can kind of ease you in. My next two to three are all kind of like
Ugh.
you gotta wait a minute on these. Like you gotta explore the space a little bit more before you get to these. But uh I think it's time. We'll go ahead and do it. 1972's Don't Torture a Duckling from Lucio Fulci, who my only exposure to him prior really was his 80s output.
Right.
These
Was that
the
a demon?
zombie. No, well, Demons is I think Demons is Lamberto Bava, is it not?
Okay. You may be
Let me
right.
let me confirm on that.
No, he did Zombie. You're right. Fulci's 1979 Zombie
Yes,
and
Demons
the Beyond.
is Lamberto Bava, son of Mario Bava.
Yep, yep.
Uh yes, but I'm more familiar with like that output from Fulci, and I was like, oh, makeup effects is his thing. Story's a little secondary, blah blah blah. But then I knew in the back of my head, I was like, oh, he directed some of these. I should go back and check these out at some point. And this is a title that always comes up. I've always been scared off because of the subject matter and the posters for this movie, just the whole vibe. I was like, how is that? And I will say, this movie is not. a fun watch. This is not an enjoyable giallo. And so going off the principle that like in general, I think this is a super fun genre and you can have a lot of fun with it. This is not a fun movie. But this I think is kind of what you and I maybe have been looking for in our entire search during this, which is like, what if one of these was about something?
Yeah.
Like actually about something. And to that degree, I think it's not only one of the best of this genre, but one of the best of the horror genre. Uh, the more and more I sat with it, it's got a lot going on. So, Don't Torture the Duckling basically centers around, it's all about a small rural town, but specifically kind of through the eyes of two outsiders, a journalist who comes to investigate what becomes a series of child murders. So I will say that from the get-go. We're dealing with the death of children, young children. Uh, and so there's only one like true set piece that involves a child, and it's pretty harrowing, but just like know that that is on the table. Uh, there's all, without spoiling anything, because you did not get to this one yet, right?
No, there was a chance that I was going to watch it last night before recording,
With
and
yes,
I think I was in a space where I was like, I'm not mentally ready for this, and so I'm
yes,
just gonna not do it.
it has some of the most intense like content, uh, and just upsetting content of anything that you're gonna watch in this genre. I'm not trying to oversell it. I'm just trying to like give people a heads up, like be in the mood for this one. But anyways, so investigation in a small town of these series of child murders, and it nails the Giallo thing, dude. We have so many red herrings, so many different people to look at, and it builds to the one of, if not the most upsetting, we got it wrong scenes I've ever seen in a movie, where I was just like, oh fuck, this is happening, and I see where this is going, and then the way that this sequence is shot, um, yeah, it's kind of a almost a centerpiece scene where everything kind of shifts and you're like, whoa, okay. I was worried about like this violence that's being perpetrated over here. Look what's being perpetrated in response to it. And then I don't want to spoil the reveal of where it ultimately goes, but the finale and the payoff to everything that you've kind of endured is one of the most like cathartic, brutal things I've ever seen in a movie. The very final moments of this movie, where it again could also drift into that Bay of Blood thing of just like, oh, is this like a sick final joke? But given the movie you've just watched, no, I was like, you practically are cheering, but like also at the same time going like, whoa, is it okay that I'm also cheering this on? A lot of complicated emotions, not one that I am loath to revisit anytime soon.
Give it a
But
couple years.
I think and I mean, it's right there in the title. I've known about this movie for a very long time, and I don't know, every time I see an image from it or anything, it had that last house on the left aesthetic vibe to me, and I was just like, ugh, like I just felt grimy even hearing the title or looking at the poster or anything. Now having seen it, I think it is one of the more powerful movies of its era, and yeah, I'm kind of recommending it to everybody to watch at some point. But it has, oh,
Be prepared.
it's got some stuff in it, man, and I can't wait to discuss it in more depth with you.
Well, and
But
so I guess there's a question there, like, because you bring up, you said Last House on the Left. It gives me similar imagery just from what I've seen of like I Spit on Your Grave. Some of these like movies that are just, for lack of a better word, like mean.
Mm-hmm.
And typically ones that like I have no interest, I've seen once or like, and I'm never going to watch again. They were not enjoyable to me. And so
This is a mean movie, to be clear. This is a mean movie, but a mean movie that has
like something to say.
actually something worth saying in it. And I think it's got way more going on than I would have initially assumed from the outside. Yeah, I was genuinely really impressed by this one and impressed by Fulci, honestly, because this is a guy who I thought was kind of just a gore hound. Like I thought that's what he was known for. And notably, this is the first movie where he starts to use any effects, but I think because he's using those effects in a more grounded story, it's all the more upsetting for it. Uh, and yeah, I was like, I kind of hats off, dude. Like I kind of he was one of those guys I wrote off as like not really but I'm like, now I want to explore more of his early filmography. And I kind of want to just go back and watch Zombie because it's a fucking crazy, wild, fun time. I mean, a zombie fights a shark, Alex. A
Yeah,
zombie fights a shark.
gotta love that. Um, Shout out to a couple other movies of his that are on my watch list. The Beyond 1981.
Another
Um,
one where it's just like, dude, turn your brain off and just get ready. The score and the visuals alone, such a good time. You got to see it at least once.
his other kind of famous Giallo is The Psychic from 1977, and so I have not seen that yet.
Streaming on Tubi. Probably gonna watch it at work tomorrow.
There you go. And those are one of those things where it's like, all right, let's go into that a little bit. We're going on a side tangent. How did like do you watch new movies at work? Because I find myself like I'll rewatch stuff when I'm doing laundry or doing whatever and like throw it on. But I really like to be dialed to like a new watch.
It's
And so are
so
you?
it's not my preferred venue for a first time watch.
You know,
In general, yes, I like to do rewatches there. I'm also obviously worried, particularly with this genre, that like even though I can see people before they come into the shop, like there are people who sometimes come in on foot, so I don't see a car pull up, that sort of thing, where I'm like I do kind of have to be constantly on guard of like is there gratuitous nudity happening right now? Which is, you're gonna see some gratuitous nudity when you're exploring this subgenre in particular, but also if you're watching any horror from the 80s backwards, like it's a
it's a dice
chance.
roll.
It's a
Yep.
dice roll, so you better know what you're watching. So in general, yes, I like to keep it to rewatches, but in this case, we needed to record this morning. For our listeners, if you're listening to this on Friday, October the 3rd, we recorded it Friday, October the 3rd, bright and early in the morning, getting up, getting our caffeine, and
I'm just helping you, bud. I've already
talking
been to
about
the gym
giallos,
today.
man. Yeah.
This next one I did watch on a plane and found myself just every now and then having to like
See
angle
that
my
you want to talk
phone.
about a dice roll, dude. Holy shit.
Well, this so I watched it on a phone. I can't move a plane seat when the
Okay,
seat is
gotcha,
like on
gotcha.
the thing.
I was also
But
gonna
I
be like,
can
what
like angle.
giallos did they have available in flight? That would be wild.
Never. I did opt to watch this instead of 28 years later.
Fair, fair.
Um, but again, that was like watching horror movies on a plane period is just like
Yeah.
maybe we'll see. And this was one that I did have to turn my phone for a couple times. It's actually not too gratuitous. You're just weird when you're like, there's nudity on my phone screen, and
Hmm.
that's not what you're looking to do. I watched 1981. More, we're gonna call it giallo adjacent, but I think it is important to kind of talk about how this genre started making its way across the globe. This is Brian De Palma's Blowout. Um,
A lot safer than two other De Palmas that you could have
Correct.
watched on a
Yes,
plane.
that's
A
right.
lot less to turn your phone for, but nonetheless,
But you still
like
have to,
the
right?
opening sequence of this movie alone, I'm just picturing Alex like, oh,
Oh,
okay,
oh,
whoa, whoa,
yep. I was in a
whoa.
window seat, so I was able to kind of angle. Um,
You're like, oh, it's done. Wait, never
Wait,
mind.
no, it's not done. But this is perfect. And so one, I really enjoyed even for some of his non-good, quote unquote, good movies. Like De Palma just shoots pretty things in a very aesthetic way, and I think it works. And so you think of, other movies that probably aren't happening. De Palma's deeply influenced by the Giallo movement. That's why Carrie has the look that it does. That's why Snake Eyes has the look that it does. Um, which is Snake Eyes is probably more akin to the Giallo subgenre or closer to just with kind of the mystery of it all. But Blowout's about John Travolta is a sound engineer who records kind of like sound for these trashy B movies. And so the very opening sequence, you're like, all right, what am I watching? And you're watching the start of like like a slasher movie taking place, which works really well. Especially I'm going in blind to it, and so I'm just like, cool, what am I watching? What's going on? Am I watching Travolta? Like I know he's in the movie, and then it kind of cuts out, and there's a gimmick that takes place that kind of pulls you out of it that I think works really well and is very comedic in its nature,
Yeah, you go to hear the big scream in the set piece, and it's
and it's
just
like, "Rrr,
it's
rrr."
terrible. So yeah, that's like the opening gauntlet essentially is like go get me a good scream.
Yep.
And he
And
goes
so
out to
as he
record some
does,
sound and, you know, records something he's not supposed to hear and gets wrapped up into a web of conspiracy and murder and danger. Should also mention this is a remake of Antonioni's Blow Up,
yeah,
which centers around the world of photography, if I'm not mistaken.
it does,
Uh,
right? So instead of seeing something in the background of a photo, he watches this and records um this car crash that happens where
a
he then has
la
to,
Ted Kennedy.
there you go. And
Chappaquiddick.
of course there's more at play. He starts pulling the thread. You kind of say, do I want to pull this thread? It works really well. It really ends up inspiring, I think, a lot of paranoia thrillers that start taking place. The Conversation, Enemy of the State, um, some of these that kind of work out really well. There's a scene where he's just splicing the sound and cutting it with video, like he's seeing the visuals in his head and he's splicing the sound. And so there's an art to it that feels like it's just a really kind of enjoyable is not the right word. It's a really interesting and engaging watch
It's a
seeing this guy
process.
splice everything out.
It's a process movie, and I think um the other kind. I mean, the main giallo factor to me is that carries over in this one. Beyond, we do have our black gloved killer, even though we know who it
We
is,
know who it is.
the terrifying John Lithgow. But uh, Travolta really fits into that mold of a lot of these young, attractive male protagonists that you
Mm,
see consistently throughout Bird with the Crystal Plumage, where it's like, oh, it's an American author over here, like, you know, who's having writer's block and then
yep.
gets wrapped up in this thing. Um, and Deep Red, what is he in Deep Red? Is he a,
I want to say he's an author.
I thought he was
Uh,
an author or an architect or something. I couldn't remember, but yeah. Um, but yeah, he fits into this mold of like, that's one of the biggest tropes as well, is like for a genre that is usually, and that's something we can maybe get into, which is like the Western slashers and stuff that kind of develop out of this, and I would say De Palma to a certain extent as well in his other films, particularly with the Nancy Allen characters, who's she's in this again, of course, as well. But I think he always has interesting female characters and
hmm
the kind of Western move in slashers towards the final girl and that being a thing. Um, I wonder where the how we feel about the fact that most of the time in these giallos, outside of the iconic Suspiria, which we've mentioned, it's usually male protagonists. The women are very much secondary. They are to a certain extent fodder. Uh, they could sometimes be there for visual exploitation as well as violent exploitation. And often I'm just thinking about like Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which I just recently rewatched. That's early Argento. That's his first movie. That's proto this whole genre. Not all the elements are there, but it's getting there.
hmm
Um, and there's the girlfriend character who, I mean, they draw attention to the fact that he's ignoring her at his own peril, like consistently throughout the movie, but she's also not really given much depth or agency or anything relative to, you know, the male counterparts. That's definitely something that runs through here.
You
But
you start to see a turn in some of those things. That I mean, so like, because a lot of them, it's it ends up being pairs a lot of the time, right? Like it's
They usually will
the
do
one
like,
character with
yes,
the detective or the one,
journalist with cop, or
right?
yeah, or reporter with
And so you start to see,
yeah.
you get into the 80s, you see a movie like 1987 Stage Fright, where it really is. You see these final girls start taking place. Argento's Opera, right, which is just kind of a rip and homage of Phantom of the Opera. It's got its Christine Daae character who's the one being tormented and
That's
kind
what
of getting
I
away. And so
I
you
think
see
that's
that
what I'm
flip.
trying to get at is like I think it so you have like the Giallo influence coming over to somebody like De Palma, and then you have this burgeoning slasher genre, which is somewhat indebted to Giallo, as we pointed out. But then the final girl thing, which seems to me again like a very much a Western conceit, Western filmmaking, if you will. And then that becoming a popular thing kind of drifts back over into, and again, the late 80s ones, except late 70s and into the 80s ones we're talking about, but Suspiria, Phenomena, uh, Tenebra has a pair, right? And
Yes.
Inferno's a pair as well. But yeah, I feel like we move more in that direction of like they're more involved. They're not just kind of background.
Well, in this,
Uh,
you start to kind of see this weird, like, is it progressive? Is it regressive theme again pop up because you do get these moments where, like, it's not just women who are getting kind of murked off in these things. Like, a lot of times it's men as well. And also, there's several of these iterations of movies where the women are the actual
or
killers,
the
right? And so
perpetrator.
there's,
That's
and
that's a
so
nice twist they like to pull a lot of the
and
time.
so I think that it's again, you kind of sit there and you're right. I think there's so much of the genre that really is kind of this voyeurism and exploitation, and you slowly start to see characters as the iterations continue that become a little bit more central to the plot, having a little bit more agency, are the ones that are figuring it out before anybody else, and the ones who are doing something about it.
Yeah.
I think it takes time to get there.
And I was gonna say, and to be clear, the entire genre, broadly speaking, of horror is guilty of this. The entire genre endeavor of filmmaking is guilty of this. I don't
To
mean
this
to
day,
sing,
right?
yeah, I don't mean to single out one genre in one particular period of time. Uh,
No, but it
but
is like
yes,
you challenge those things because I think you let it be said that that's a thing, right? And it that exists. And there's anytime you're talking about, especially giallo, because so much of it is ingrained in the art versus the violence and that stylization of it all. There's just a constant question of that, and I think that there's so many times the camera's voyeuristic in what it's showing you. At the same time, the movie is saying like you're watching it.
hmm
So like, where are we right now? And maybe there's a turn and a lot of times people get their comeuppance, which is always great to see because I think that's the other side of it is when so many of these killers in these movies have this kind of like traditional viewpoint of the world against free expression and against sexual expression, against art taking place. They also get their comeuppance and are shown to be like the ones that are not like that.
you have
They're
to
the ones
watch
that are
Don't
being
Torture a
hypocritical.
Duckling so we can talk about it. I'm dying right now,
Yeah,
dude.
you really sold it the first time around to being
Oh
like
my
it's a tough
God.
watch.
The
Go
en
go
the
go.
ending of that movie, man. Wow.
So
Wow.
I think that really plays into it. So I think Blowout has this um it's clearly this obsession with kind of like perception and voyeurism and artifice that all exist right there. And you can see the DNA of the giallo subgenre in this American film. Travolta's really good in it.
One of I
Um,
one of his best performances, easily,
and
like top three for me personally.
I think we're less creeped out. That's not. We're not less creeped out. We are less surprised of a villainous John Lithgow,
Hmm.
especially after like Dexter.
Absolutely.
But you
Yeah.
do wonder, like, all right, went on to do Third Rock from the Sun after this. Uh, sure, and
Yeah.
it just makes you go, that dude's good. That is a talented individual. Honestly, his performance didn't like. He kind of comes off as just like he's creepy, he's good, but it's not anything that you're like, oh, Lithgow really
Oh
showing
yeah.
up and showing out.
It's
Um,
just it's just a fun performance.
it's
Yeah.
just, but it, and it's a good movie.
And a great weapon, like an iconic weapon
The
with the
little
with the
watch that
watch
turns
the
into the
watch
piano
piano
wire.
wire. Yeah. That's good stuff.
When And there's really good callbacks to that because at certain points you're that moment where you're hearing these sounds when he's recording the initial accident
Hmm.
and they're making it seem like this one sound is a part of a blinking stop sign or stoplight or whatever it is, and then you hear it later on in the movie and you're like, "Oh,
See,
dude was there," right?
this
Like
is one I would die to see in the theater just for that sequence, just for the editing and him chopping everything back together because the sound design in that sequence alone is just, I'm thinking about like how complicated that is to do all of the like, oh my God, so good.
speaking of old movies that are going back to theaters, I will be watching Perfect Blue today for the first time
Hell yeah.
in theaters.
I'm very excited to discuss with you. I think it's playing at 3 o'clock uh my time, so our time. I don't know what I'm saying, my time
Our
for.
time. Eastern
Uh
time, baby.
yeah. Uh I think I might be checking that out as well.
All right. Well, what's your third movie on the list as we continue to progress through
I'm
this?
gonna try to I'm gonna try to sell you on one that I know you've watched, but I don't know if you've reapproached, and I don't even know if I can entice you to reapproach.
I'm intrigued.
Been a fave of mine for a long time. This again goes back to the OG Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments list, uh, which gives away the ending of this film.
That's my one issue with those shows because like I love that it reels you in and gives you bits and pieces of like iconic scenes that make you want to watch those movies. But two things happen. One, it's the only good scene in that movie. Or two, they like tell you who the killer is that's like the third act reveal and you're like,
Yeah,
"Thanks. Cool."
I almost thought you knew what I was going to say already based on your reaction. It's 1973's Don't Look Now from Nicholas Rogue.
Maybe. I don't, yeah, I was not hot on it. And to be fair, that's one of those ones where, again,
But
I
I
think you got
feel
to catch
like you
yourself in the right mind and vibe to watch.
absolutely, but I feel like you also maybe watched this before you had like kind of fallen in love with the subgenre.
That's
So
true.
maybe I could get you to reassess. Here's what I love about it. Okay. Tough sell on paper. Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie uh, are living in Venice after the very incredibly upsetting uh, death of their young daughter who drowns in the opening moments of the movie.
No, your last two picks have had a theme that I'm a little concerned about.
I'm just, I know we said this is supposed to be fun, but again, these are like, Alex is giving you the like, hey, here's the fun ones, here's the murder mysteries, and I'm like, okay, and when you're done with those, get
Watch
into the
the
depths of
deeply
your soul.
upsetting.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, so they're in Venice. They're dealing with the fallout from that. I believe he's like an architect or he does restoration of some sort of. I'm not sure, but he's working or overseeing like a crew that's restoring a church, I believe. It's kind of vaguely why they're there, why they need to be there. And in the background of all of this, people, there's murders happening. Now, we're not really seeing any of them, but you have this vague sense of like something's going on. We get some like quote unquote supernatural elements that get introduced with some potentially psychic characters who are maybe having premonitions of events that might take place in the future, maybe trying to warn or help our character who begins to investigate what's going on around here because they keep seeing a figure in a red raincoat, the same raincoat that their daughter was wearing when she drowned.
Hmm.
So, this is a Giallo surrealism movie, if you will.
Yeah.
This is a an existential thriller. It's very dreamlike. Nicholas Rogue is known as an incredibly experimental editor. Uh, I believe he is English by descent. I don't know. I always associate him with Australia, I think because of the movie Walkabout, but I believe he is British, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm.
Uh, if he is in fact a different nationality, I apologize to any Nicholas Rogue fans. Uh, but yeah, very interesting editing rhythm. This is known for having like one of the most iconic sex scenes in movies in general, but just because of the way it's communicated. Uh, and it's just, again, it's a vibes movie. It makes you sit in some really uncomfortable emotions. It also just has this vague air of menace the whole time. I love the way that Venice is shot throughout. Uh, it's just, it's eerie, it's unsettling. And if you don't know the ending, which I will not spoil for you here, I think if you go in cold, it is one of the kind of greatest gut punch, what the fuck, holy shit moments that you could experience in horror movies. So I've always been kind of pissed that it was vaguely ruined for me. I still, the first time I finally sat and watched the movie, even knowing where it was ultimately headed, I was happy that like the emotional build up to that moment is what made it still hit for me. Whereas,
Just the air
uh,
getting let out of your tires at the very end.
yes. So I encourage you, if you're not familiar with it, and this is your somehow your first time ever hearing about it, just avoid uh, reading anything. Just know that it's got two like very dynamite performances at the center of it. They're in a very, it's not, again, not a fun one, but if you want unsettling, creepy, like if you want to actually be like, ugh, uh, this season, but you gotta give it time as well because it moves at its own pace. And I know the dreamlike quality and the editing in particular, you'll see what I mean when you start watching it, can turn some people off. So it's also one I encourage if you struggled with the first time that you maybe give a second glance at. Uh,
Maybe one day.
yeah.
Maybe one day.
So yeah, that's what that's
People,
what I that's what I got for you for that one.
it's commonly listed high on like the mystery
Just
thriller
horror lists
horror
in
list
general. Yeah.
regularly. So, um, and now that I've seen Venice and been there, maybe there's a little bit more of a pool in the environment that's
I,
there, and
again, yeah, you you gots to.
we got to.
You
All
got
right,
to
I'll
do it
I'll
again.
try it. Tis the month, you know.
I think there's several other giallos set in
It,
Venice that we could also recommend.
I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure there's plenty of them.
only so many towns in Italy, Noah.
Yes.
Um, let's go back and talk a little Argento. We're gonna go
We,
80s
we
Argento.
gots to.
Tenebrae is, uh, I would say right now, probably
Is that your
right up there with
second favorite?
Suspiria, maybe first. Um,
Okay.
of Argento. I
I'm gonna have to rewatch
I
this
really
and
enjoyed
reassess.
it.
Okay.
Um,
That's a bold statement, my friend.
it is, but it's like there's a lot of style to it. There's this really wild crane shot that goes through this modernist house that I think is just super cool.
Hmm.
Um, there's also like I mean, it's the premise is this author writes a horror book. Somebody starts kind of picking off
Reenacting
people
the
and reenacting the book.
yes.
Um, and so it's this whodunit who's doing this. The author's kind of in trouble, and there's a lot of people and characters involved that can get in the way, and just some brutal things that take place throughout it. I think the twist works really well at the end. This is one of those traditional ones where I think like regardless of if you know it's coming, it still kind of like plays well.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's this to the point. This I think this is another one of those moments where Argento's kind of being like, how do I feel about being the person who's putting this stuff out into the world? Um, and you get this kind of meta territory that's commenting on its own existence, and um, I do think that like this like Gaspar Noé's work. We'll mention Nicholas Winding Refn again, deeply tied to kind of this hyper modernist look that I think really plays out super well. It's good. It's easy. Easy watch may not be the word for it, but it is one that I just think kind of meets all those twists and turns and is fun. And yeah, Argento's got a
It's
massive
it,
catalog, and
it's
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 definitely on the
got
top end
all,
of it.
and it's, you know, what'd you say, 83?
82.
82. So it's like at this point all of the tropes have been firmly established. Like it feels like maybe the final evolution of the Giallo in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Um and it's more there's no supernatural bent to that one at all, correct?
No, no,
I
it's
didn't think
all.
so. Like Inferno still has is part of the Mother's trilogy, so it still has like supernatural. That's 80 on the dot, right? That's 1980.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So yeah, this one is almost maybe the most fully formed version of his classic ones, more like Crystal Plumage, Four Flies on Gray Velvet, like, you know, the early ones kind of fully refined without that supernatural bent. So I think, yeah, I like the idea of it maybe standing side by side, Suspiria. To say that it's above, I think I got to rewatch and
That's
reassess.
what, and that's tough.
But I like it as two sides of the same coin of like, hey, I can do the more grounded, still set PC slashery thing, or I can do the, incredible Technicolor Wonderland, dreamscape surrealism of Suspiria, like
When that's
all of
like
that too.
Suspiria's got like from a plot standpoint is a little more like you've got to be down for just being in the experience of it all and um like why is that lady jumping into barbed wire? Um but this definitely is yeah, more linear plot, more kind of straightforward in terms of what it's offering.
Yeah,
Um I love Suspiria. But I'm also no, I'm not gonna say that on air. I really enjoy both Suspiria and the remake for different reasons. And I don't know if we're going to dive more into that, like if Suspiria is going to end up being a large talking point in the near future, but
I don't know.
we'll have to see. But I think it it works. It's stylized in a way that's I just there's some really interesting things that happen in this, and um, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan, and I think this is Giallo has become yeah one of those really interesting genres. This is why we're doing the episode. I think I'm putting Blood and Black Lace and Tenebrae is probably my two top tier entries into the movement.
Nice. Um, I'm gonna go with this is this is my American pick, if you will.
Ooh.
Uh, Obviously, as you mentioned, Brian De Palma, huge influence on his entire career, but particularly his 70s and 80s output. But there's another guy that rates a little bit higher for me on my personal list. Uh, one of my top five favorite filmmakers of all time, Mr. Billy Friedkin, uh, who after the high heights of the success of The Exorcist and The French Connection, uh, right at after the abject failure of Sorcerer in 1977, getting crushed by Star Wars, and basically him going like, I guess the filmmaker era is over. He squeezes in one more how the hell did they let him do this movie, and in 1980 he delivers Cruising, starring Mr. Al Pacino. Uh, Cruising is set in the leather bar
Mm-hmm.
subculture in late 70s, early 80s New York. You know, grimy, gritty New York. New York when it was still dangerous. This era, like before everything was cleaned up, so to speak, back when it was still super interesting. This is like post Deuce era, like tail end of that era, but you've got prostitution everywhere. You've got sex clubs. You've got corrupt cops. All of it. So it is a very much a giallo set in this setting, and all of the complications that come along with that. And you want to talk about just like putting your hand on the oven, so to speak, of just like you're gonna play with all of this in this era. Like, how is this gonna work?
Right.
Um, I think it is one of the most fascinating movies ever made. I think it's, to your point, even relative to its time, I think it's incredibly progressive. I think it's like really smart and thoughtful in its exploration of everything that's going on there. It's also hard to feel like it's not maybe a little exploitative here and there. But another one that I need you to see, because
You got to talk about it more.
we got to talk about it in more depth. But to that point, it goes out of its way to not other entire communities of people, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
to highlight a lot of the injustices of that time and a lot of the inherent corruption and hypocrisy of the people who were enforcing things against this community. Um, I think it's just as compelling and interesting as it was at the time. It's both an artifact of its time in a lot of ways, but it's also, I think it's still something that like you can wrestle with and have a really interesting conversation about what fully is going on there. And it also it has the whodunit aspect, it has the mystery aspect. Essentially, Al Pacino is like a street level cop who goes undercover in the leather bar scene because there is a string of murders all connected to this gay underground subculture and a few specific bars in the meatpacking district of New York at the
Hmm.
time. So that's where everything kind of, so he's essentially doing surveillance, so he has to go into this subculture and kind of become a different person, or was it the person he was always trying to be? It's the movie walks such an interesting tightrope, and it never quite uh maybe gives you all the answers that you want.
Yeah.
So it has an ambiguity to it that I think is why I keep coming back to it over and over again. It's also gorgeously shot, uh, and captures New York at a very particular time that is, I think, pretty essential and interesting to take a look at. There's a beautiful new 4K of it out there from Arrow Video, and I think this one is in the Criterion now as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
It might be, or no, maybe it's just like a super fancy new 4K release. But if you've never seen it, it is more easy to see now than it has ever been before. For a while, it was kind of hard to find, but it has kind of been reassessed as one of the most interesting movies of the 1980s, and one of the better movies of Friedkin's already illustrious career. And it is very much an American giallo through and through. I think that argument is, it's not even like something where it's like, oh, you could kind of connect this one. I'm like, no, it's got all the hallmarks you could kind of want and expect from it. Uh, but I think maybe outdoes the all of the Italian giallos I've seen in regards to its protagonist, because it gives them so much rich stuff to play, uh, that is not necessarily there in the script, but
Pacino does it.
it's there, yeah. And
What's
apparently
it?
they hated each other and had a horrible time making it, but it's one of those that you're like, well, whatever you guys were doing, it worked.
Unfortunately, it worked.
Yeah.
Whiplash style.
Yeah.
Um, it is interesting because like so much of Giallo too, it does question those systems that are creating this new kind of expansion of the world that's taking place, and part of that I think is also like sometimes it's critiquing sometimes the structures of police in these areas and how good are they at their jobs or how just you know
That's definitely a
are
runner
they
throughout
fumbling
the
everything, right?
ineptitude of the ineptitude of the power structure and like the stuff that's supposed to be there to safeguard these citizens. It's like most of the time, even when the protagonist is working in tandem with the detectives, it's like it is ultimately usually a quote unquote like a private citizen who has to step up and be like, I will solve this string of
This for you
murders
because you're
that
yep,
has foiled the entire local police department. And sometimes it's because the police department is in on that thing,
yep,
or because some corrupt official or rich person in town is trying to make people disappear,
getting
or
paying
any
people
number of things.
off and
Yeah.
but also that critique of so much of this in so many of these movies, right? Where it's these no-namers that are getting picked off are these people that the world's kind of forgotten about to begin with because they're just kind of randos on the streets that these things are happening to and so the want isn't there, right? It's not worth the structures that are in place. They don't value that time. And so that's why these individuals who are not a part of that system have to come into play. I think it just kind of harkens back to the Giallo's got this level of depth that I don't think exists with. And granted, there's versions of the Giallo movies that don't do this well because they're just, as you said earlier, kind of making their versions of it just to kind of get cheap kills on the screen. I do think this it just opens there's more discussion to be had, I think, with a lot of these movies that doesn't exist with House of Wax that came out in 2003 or 5 or whatever. Um, I've got one more. It's
But
Americanized in modern version of it. We've mentioned his name a couple times of Nicholas Winding Refn finally getting to make his Giallo movie. Some people love it, some people hate it.
it sounds like pretty much every movie he's ever made. Yep.
That's true. I think Neon Demon is perfect. It's not Giallo adjacent. It's Giallo, right? We're talking about going through the fashion world in LA. We're getting these deeply rich neon colors throughout and these settings that are very minimalist, but also very kind of in that modernist take. And we even get like the weird kind of gothic style mansion scene towards the end, and it plays through there. NWR knows what he's doing. He knows he did his homework on all of this, and I think it works so well. Everything is very slow and intentional and methodical, like all of his movies. Um, you've got Jesse's first photo shoot that you're very unsure of what's actually going on at that time, that I think plays really well at the start of the movie. You see the turns that start to take place that are very strange throughout. And then that act three is just, you know, insane in so many ways.
Hmm.
I think it plays very well. It's clearly an homage to everything that came before it. Uh, And I'm a big fan. I enjoy it. And I think there's two different readings of it well, there's one a major reading of it, and then there's the reading that I like to have with it. And the first one, right, is the Neon Demon is LA, and it's
Hmm.
the scene and what it does, and it's insidious and the way that it kind of grips onto the people who are trying to make their name out there. Especially NWR says that this kind of came about one from his love of Giallo, but then his daughters that he has and trying to kind of critique the world that that's getting kind of pushed onto them in his thought process.
Hmm.
I kind of view it with a little more agency in terms of the way that I view is the kind of Elle Fanning character is the neon demon who's coming to kind of exact vengeance on people who are um, participating in that culture. I
Right.
think it's a great movie. Um, and so I think that's just chronologically, I think that's where we are right now. Certainly more have been made since then, but I think that's kind of been the last one that I've seen that I've been like, as a modern Giallo, my stamp of approval goes on
Cer-
that one.
Certainly. We've kind of off mic discussed a handful of, I'm like, I know this genre is being kept alive by a lot of Italian filmmakers still, and a lot of the aesthetics of it, uh, at the very least. But yeah, I have some catching up to do. Movies like Let the Corpses Tan and the the Color of Your Body's Tears is the Strange Color of Your Body's Tears, I believe, is the other. Those are the same filmmakers. Those are two big ones more recently that I feel like I need to give a peek. But I will go back. I was, I did. I figured we were going to mention Argento a lot, so I didn't put any on my list. We ended up talking about Suspiria a lot. And I wanted to lighten things up and go out on a fun one for me personally. So I was going to go with a De Palma pick, and I was going to go with the funnest one possible, which is Phantom of the Paradise.
Dude, I love that movie.
Because to the point that Giallo can morph into anything, we have a Giallo musical, essentially. A Giallo horror musical. Like, where else are you going to find that? I'm
And
sure there's
it's
one that exists. Somebody, a listener, let me know. Like, there has to be the equivalent in Italy. Like, where is the rock opera that is also a Giallo? Let me know. Let me know.
the music's also good. You
It's
know what I mean?
really
Like
good.
it's
I,
good
I
music.
don't know if we've said this on a podcast where you and I have been talking or not, but and again, I feel weird saying it. I'm like, who's gonna come after me? I don't know. I've never been a Rocky Horror guy, but I am a fan of the Paradise guy. Like this is my shit. This is my rock opera. This is what I want of the fusion of these things,
You
personally.
and I are the same. This came out a year before Rocky, and I think
It did.
Rocky is one of those things that um, I have yet to do a midnight showing of it because I think I've aged out personally. I'm not up at midnight anymore. Um, and I think if that would have been the experience that I had with it the first time or first couple times that I watched Rocky, I probably would have more of a an attachment to it. Phantom of the Paradise, I think I watched for the first time just on a whim, and it's easy to kind of be like, "Oh, this is a B movie that I'm gonna put on in the background." It's got some brutal things in it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also this like Faustian tale that's smarter than it has any right being, um, in terms of what it's kind of bringing to the table. And it's good, and it's campy, and it's wild. Um, the uh, the neon lightning sign getting thrown from the rafters is the equivalent of the chandelier getting dropped in Phantom of the Opera. Like, is just a great scene. But the music rips, and
Yeah. Paul Williams doing most of the score, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
um, and he's yeah, it's so good, and it's got our who's the girl in it? It's Suspiria, right?
Jessica Harper from
Yeah, yeah.
Suspiria. Yeah. A
And
full
she's got this
a
song in
full
it that she
3 years
sings like
before. Again, dude, the conversation happening back and forth. You know, De Palma, you know, De Palma's bringing influence from Argento in some ways, and then Argento definitely sees Phantom of the Paradise and is like, oh, I like her. Yeah.
and she's great. She sings this little number in it that I think works so well. And again, it's critiquing those power structures of like the industry, the music
Yeah, applied to
industry.
the music industry. It's such, oh my God, such a fun movie. That one, I don't know, dude. I've been on a real, again, horror comedy kick to start off the month. I don't know if I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying to just keep things light given given the world right now. But yeah, I think Phantom of the Paradise, that might be my tonight watch. 'Cause it's been a minute. It's been like 2 years. But yeah,
Yeah,
Shout Factory has a great Blu-ray of it, but I think it's been back on streaming like pretty regularly now. So
well, and I think it's picked up. You know, it's really one of the things that's been interesting to see is what happens when you have things like Letterbox that updates their kind of top 250 list with regularity, and so you get these horror movies that are like, hey, top 250 horror movies on Letterboxd,
hmm
and you start to see things rotate out because something will kind of go up to the middle of the list or the top of the list, and then that means an influx of people will watch it that for the first time, and then it may kind of fluctuate off the list, and so new things are
yeah,
popping up there pretty regularly. And this was one of them that it was on that list the first, a couple years ago, and I was like, all right, I love Carrie. I really have never taken a deep dive into Palma's work. Let's let's check it out. Threw it on and was like, oh yeah, this is fun. And then I was like, I think I love this. Like by the end of it, and then
yeah.
the next year comes around and I watch it again, and I'm like, yep, this is an annual watch for me. Like this is great. It's also one of those horror movies that like is an all year horror movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
you
one of
could
those
watch,
things
you
where
could
it's like
throw it on
you can
whenever.
watch it
It's
in
just
March
fun.
and you're still going to get the same vibes to it.
Absolutely.
Um and I think it just everyone shows up in this campy way, but it's really thoughtful and the music's great and um again we like to see bad people get their comeuppance and that
Yeah,
that happens.
it definitely nails that. Yeah.
And so De Palma is one, and it's probably my next director, where I just need to take like a full deep dive into all, because I've seen enough to be like, I genuinely like De Palma, and
Yeah, I mean, you
but I've
can
still never
pretty
seen
much,
Sisters, right? So like that's his other horror movie that,
Sisters is quite fun. Uh, yeah, definitely worth watching. The Great Margot Kidder.
so I just we
Pretty great, pretty twisted, very, very Hitchcocky, you know. That one's still, he kind of has two key, you know, that's his biggest influence by far, I would say. And obviously a lot of the European cinema we've been
Well, and
to see.
also a lot of people haven't heard of one of his other movies, but have you ever heard of Mission Impossible, Noah?
Yes, I'm aware. I'm
Oh,
aware.
he did
Uh,
that too.
he did do
Weirdly
that.
enough, not a Scarface guy either, though.
Dude, I mean, I want to like yell at you for that take, but I'm also like that's fair. It is a 10 out of 10 masterpiece in mine and Gavin's humble opinion, and it must be watched every summer on the hottest day you can find. Uh,
Maybe it deserves a rewatch.
in the middle of the afternoon, whenever you have 3 hours to spare. Uh, Absolutely love it. Stone Cold classic. One of the best movies ever made.
But you think it's better than Snake Eyes?
Well, yeah. Well, for faux show. Uh, but yeah, no,
Uh,
dude. I mean, Snake Eyes, as far as like single location murder mystery thriller, it's got a lot of the elements. If you really want to go there, it's kind of action giallo, conspiracy giallo,
well,
assassination giallo.
yeah, that's right. And I think that's Knives Out is three neon lights away from being an interesting
Sure.
giallo. You know what I mean? And so I think
Yeah.
that there's a more cinema owes a lot of its kind of recognition, or the roots kind of are grounded in this genre that I don't know that other movies exist in the same way.
Yeah.
Certainly, mystery stories have been told over time, and giallos are not the first, but there's something about the stamp that they made and where you see that in future movies that you're just kind of like, yeah, I think,
Yeah.
that's why I did this.
I would like to see. Uh, I'd like to see more of an injection of it back into our mainstream horror movies. The only ones that you can really point to recently, I think, were uh, not successful. There was the kind of, for both of us, very disappointing Last Night in Soho from Edgar Wright,
Hmm.
which we were very excited going into because it was like, oh, he's
His
doing his
giallo, yeah.
giallo. Great, let's do it. Um, Now I will say, is there a world where after we've binged through a lot of these uh over the next, that's my I guess my other question is, are you still going with this throughout the month, or are you kind of gialloed out already in prep for this episode? Because
No,
I watched like 4 or 5 back to back to just like, do I want to throw any of these on here? Uh so I was curious, are you going to continue to explore? But my long-term question is, if we really did a binge and like went through, 20 or 30 of these that we hadn't seen yet, and then you come back to Last Night in Soho, are you like, oh, dude, I can feel and see now that like everything he's doing here is so indebted to all of these things, and I get all the visual references and blah blah blah. Like, does it elevate if you're in that shit, as opposed to when we kind of went to it, kind of just as like, this is his new movie. Obviously, I'm just gonna get everything. Like, I'm curious. I'm curious if it might improve because I have not rewatched it.
neither have I. And I don't know that it will because the style was never the issue with that, right? Like that was never my problem with that movie. It was a lot of just
But
like
but
the
from
delivery
a
on
I'm saying
on
even from a plotting perspective, maybe
you're gonna be
we'd
like, "Oh,
feel
I get this
differently.
now." Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know.
Potentially. I think my a couple of the deep dives that I want to do is to say I want to be intentional next about like, all right, what are the Giallo, modern Giallo movies that are really reclaiming all the things that were issues with it the first time?
Hmm.
Um, and so there are certainly movies that I want to go look at to say like, all right, is there were women kind of involved in the making of, and how does that reshape um, some of those critiques that happen in those 60s and 80s films. Knife and Heart is a movie I haven't seen yet, but that is typically on the list of modern giallos. Um, that's more of a queer giallo set in the 70s, but came out in 2016, and um, so that's one I want to take a look at. Last Night in Soho is probably worth the rewatch to see if the themes kind of, because that does have more feminist themes. I just don't know if it landed the ship the way that
Yeah.
it meant to. I think that was kind of um, The Strange Color of Your Bodies is another one where it's kind of a dual director team who's creating that, and um,
And again, I think that's the same team as Let the Corpses Tan, which is a
And
little
so,
more action oriented, a little more like a Polizzi movie, if I'm not mistaken, which is a whole other subgenre of like basically cops and robbers Italian films, which I kind of want to get into. That's more like 60s, kind of fades out in the 70s, I think. But yeah, dude, there's these little pockets you find every once in a while, and so fun to
well, you know,
especially when you're a horror fan to be like, I can just focus on this one thing. Like I'm only watching supernatural summer camp movies from the
right,
year 1986.
and
You
see
know?
and really take a deep dive. I think because you know, Giallo, that aspect of like let's take white lights and just make them purple, or like
Right?
let's just make them red. You start to
Hmm.
see those in other things, and so like She Dies Tomorrow is a horror movie that I think
Yeah.
really you and I really dug that no one else seems to really enjoy because it is more this psychological, existential kind of feel to it. There's not really a killer on the loose or anything. It's just kind of this
Yeah,
interesting
I
kind
get.
of subject matter, but like again, just deep, bold colors and imagery that take place throughout all
We
that I think really works.
we haven't really invoked it yet, but obviously Scream is the closest consistent thing. Scream and Knives Out, as you pointed out, are the closest things we have to at least the basic structure of the murder mystery.
Right.
I guess I'm just like that would be enough, I guess, is I'm like, guys, just write a good, hey, I'm on vacation in a foreign country and I witness a murder. And that, like, literally take crystal plumage and just use the basic setup. Okay. And I happened to witness it and I was in close proximity. The local authorities have confiscated my passport.
Right.
So I am
I'm stuck
incentivized,
here.
A, because I saw a violent act take place in front of me. Like, I want to know what happened there. I'm haunted by it. I also have the practicality of like, hey, I really want them to solve this so I can get the fuck out of this country before I get murdered. Like, you could take that basic structure and just apply. I'm like, I feel like maybe we've gotten a little too crazy with like everything has to be either really over here on the supernatural side or really grounded, but ultimately, like, we're exploring trauma again, like, one of our most overdone tropes at this point. I think there's a way for this to come back in an original capacity that's not tied to IP or franchise or whatever, and do that. The other one that I probably should go back and check out because it's more on the supernatural bent was Malignant, which I know a lot of people loved at the time, and was
You
James
did
Wan.
not.
I was a I was a little more mixed on it. Again, this was the era of like everything's just coming straight to Max. This was still COVID
Like
times.
2021, right?
Yeah, it's hard to really like gauge what my actual mood was about a movie versus how my just mood was in general. So giving it the benefit of the doubt, I think I gave it like a 6 or 6.5 at the time. But it's the only other thing that comes to mind recently aesthetically that was even approaching it and definitely leaned way more towards the Suspiria side of things of like and Inferno where it's like this is heightened supernatural giallo. So I'm like there's still people doing it, but I guess I'm saying is like we could dial it back and evolve our own version of it again if somebody really wanted to do this shit here. And I think there's a way to like bring that same aesthetic and that approach to a modern American setting in a way that could be really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's just because even something like Stranger Things that was culturally, you know, 5 years ago was culturally the thing in the zeitgeist. It's fallen off a little bit, but right, like, and it's not Giallo, but direct ties where you can see that soundtrack is if Goblin doesn't do what they do
Well,
in
and
Argento's, like, do you
and
get that?
Carpenter, and Carpenter is a huge fan of Suspiria. One of the
Right.
few he does not give out compliments lightly, but that is one of the few horror films where he's like, nah. A few modern, contemporary horror films to when he was making shit that he will be like, no, that movie fucking rules.
When
So
it's almost
clearly
like
an influence, yeah.
Carpenter's an example of right. You just Yeah, is he using these neon colors? No, but is his lighting stylized in a way that I don't think happens if Giallo isn't doing what it's doing? Probably, right? Like you don't get these really cool, vivid shots without this stuff taking place before it. And um, then you really start to dial back into just Hitchcock in general, who was kind of doing these like whodunits, what's going on, just without the stylization that was happening in the same way. But then you have movies like Watcher in 2022 with Michael Monroe, who it's like it's almost like anti-Giallo in terms of the way that it's staged because it's done in this foreign country that's viewed as much colder, right? And
Yep.
so it's
Got
instead
a
of
lot.
purples and blues, you're getting like cold whites and cold yellows, but it is stylized beyond belief. And it is this like the cops aren't helping me. I'm going to figure this out on my own type deal.
That one's
Um,
also got a lot in common with Don't Look Now, just vibes wise.
I
Just
don't believe
saying.
you, Noah.
It just
Stop selling. I ain't buying.
I've been trying to sell it for so many years. Yeah.
But again, it's and there's movies that I, want to go back to. The Love Witch is probably another example of one that's hyper stylized that I don't think I was bought into the first time around. That I'm like, all right, it's a cult classic for a reason. Maybe I need to redial into it. So,
Yep.
um, I'll,
On the I was gonna say, and on the true Giallo front, I will just say, if you don't have Tubi installed as an app, which I think pretty much comes with any television you buy these days and
you
any
can, yeah.
phone service or whatever. I will just say, if you want to dive in and you're more of the mind of like, you know what, I just kind of like to throw something on this time of year. Um, literally like throw a dart on Tubi. They have access to pretty much all of these movies that we've like all of the all of the movies of the era are pretty much on there.
I would. It's been
Good and bad. There's a lot of crap on there, but
one. There's so
there's
much
plenty
that
to
takes place on
explore.
Tubi. So it really it's almost like anything that came out from the 50 between 50s and 80s ends up being on Tubi, and you just got to kind of be okay with hitting a WGN style AMC commercial midway through these classic films. But
Yeah, and I always feel like it's somewhat it plays okay, and I will give this to Tubi. They do a good job of like they're like ad break coming in five, in 10, 9, 8, 7, and then when it comes back, it does give you the a little snippet before
like
the
the 10
break
seconds,
to
yep.
transition back in. It's not this weird abrupt like boom we're back in kind of thing, which I do appreciate. They
I
give you
will say that Tubi
continuity and
does a better job
they
of,
make it easy to pause and get back to where you need to be.
and they do a good job of it being at the end of a scene, typically, or like at least
They
at the
they do
transition of a
they
scene
do seem pretty
versus like
well framed most of the time, which is always surprising for like yeah, some of these older movies where I'm like, "Oh dude, maybe it's an algorithm or whatever," but somehow yeah, even in things that like, "Oh, that scene was like 35 seconds long and now we're cutting over to a new location." They time that shit well. I'll give them credit. Credit where credit is due. Tubi, if you're going on the Giallo deep dive, Tubi is the easiest thing to get access to because it's basically free. But beyond that, I would say Shudder is good to have in your repertoire. I think they're a little underserved on the Giallo front at the moment, but but yeah, between those two, you're gonna be able to find what you're looking for the most part.
absolutely.
And I always recommend this as well. Go to your local retailers, your local vinyl and DVD type shops and used places. It tis the season. People have stuff on display, and do a blind buy every once in a while. You're not gonna be mad. You're gonna have fun. Just go based on the cover. Grab one of these. If you see the name Bava, if you
You're
see
probably in a good
if you
spot,
see the
right?
name Fulci, if you see the name Argento,
As long as
like
it's before 2001, you're
yeah,
probably fine, right?
uh, Antonio Margarete, Sergio Martino. Uh,
Yeah, and then really we didn't even because it's not Giallo, but you really start to see these Italian guys start to get into the zombie and the makeup effects and keep the stylized kind of blood and things that were going on. And so
yeah, because that as much as you have the 80s becomes kind of the slasher genre for a bit. The other thing that you get in the late 70s is Dawn of the Dead, which becomes a in 78, which becomes a huge international success,
Right.
like more so than it was here. And in Italy, that movie is basically like Citizen Kane, essentially. And so you see, it's another one where it's like that movie hit, and everybody started making zombie movies or demon movies that gave, basically were like, well, it's zombies, but they're possessed by demons, not by some gas or like a chemical leak or whatever. Or they're not the undead, they're demons. But you see an explosion of that subgenre after. And again, I don't know. I love the way that different film industries talk back and forth to each other. And we should mention all of this is all predicated on all of it becoming intertwined in the late 60s, the era that is, I guess for most mainstream audiences, it's touched on in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was the idea of aging American TV stars with like established names or aging film stars. Once you were kind of past your prime, kind of the VOD of its day was you go make a bunch of Italian westerns or you go make a bunch of Italian crime thrillers or whatever. Because again, we haven't really mentioned this, but most of these movies you're going to watch are post sync sound with a bunch of different people doing the dubbing because these movies are shot with like, hey, the female lead, she's actually from Germany, so she's speaking German. Meanwhile, the male lead, we're saying he's American, but actually he's from up the road in Italy, so he's speaking Italian. And then meanwhile, the detective over here, well, he's French, and everybody's just speaking their own language, and we're just going to worry about it afterwards, and we're going to worry about the sound afterwards, and it's not really going to matter because we're going to have an awesome score, and don't worry about it. But yeah, anyways, all of the intertwining of these two different industries uh all kind of starts there of like them bringing over big brand name actors to sell their movies here and it being kind of like a second leg, a second wind for aging movie stars from our era. It doesn't really happen anymore. I mean, there is now. It's like it's John Cusack and Morgan Freeman going to make a movie in Belarus,
Right.
stuff like that, which I guess is the equivalent. But yeah, out of that came, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the Dollars trilogy, things like that that would have never happened, and then eventually all of the stuff we're discussing right now. Yeah,
And I pulled up the Tubi kind of look just to see like for those Tenebrae, Blood and Black Lace, Bird in the Crystal Plumage, How to Torture Don't Torture a Duckling, The Laughing Woman, The Psychic, Phenomena,
Black Belly of
um,
the Tarantula.
The Girl Who
I,
Knew Too Much, Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have
I
the Keys,
I have
which
to
is like
watch that one at some point, dude. What a title.
what
What have they done to
I was about to chuckle. It's
Solange?
like all
What
of
have
these
they
like
done to our daughters? These are, yeah,
yeah, Giallo is the has the naming conventions of most Midwest emo song titles, but it it all works. Um and I think that it's just it's a continued subgenre that is exciting to explore for all its flaws and regressive nature to progressive nature. It just opens itself up to a world
yeah.
of conversation
And
that I think is fun.
every Arctober, it's always the little thing in my back pocket where I'm like, hey, there's still like 80 of those you've never seen. Pick a couple, work
Pick
them
a
into
couple,
the
throw them on.
rotation, and eventually, I, and again, as we get into these, it's like we'll kind of shout to each other like, "Hey, did you check out this one? Yeah, you could skip it." Or, yeah, dude, it's
You
got
should
this one set piece. You should definitely. It's worth watching because it's
you
got
should
it's got 5 minutes that are really good.
when earlier you asked me, you're like, how, you start in September. What I end up really doing is I try to get most of my new watches in September so that when we start having these conversations and things on mic, that I have a baseline for it. October is really where a lot of my rewatches take place.
That
That's where it's
makes that
like,
makes sense, and that's
I need to
honestly
go,
what I should start doing. But
I need to watch Scream 1 through, 3 again, or I need to watch The Faculty or The Shining,
yeah,
or found out my wife has never seen Misery, so that will likely be like a
that should
November winter watch.
that should definitely be on
Um,
there.
because like, you know, that cobbling scene is still gives me nightmares.
Um,
Um,
I guess as we're wrapping up here, because this
These
is kind of the kickoff, the unofficial kickoff to Arctober season. We will be returning before the month is over with our big 25 for 25 episode. We are currently waiting for all of our participants to finish their list. Gentlemen, if
Get
you're
them to me.
listening, this is a reminder to finish your list and send them to either myself or Alex directly so that you do not spoil your list for our fellow contributors. We will be we, Alex will be ranked choice voting all of these lists and determining what our site list is. And then we will be announcing those and running through them on a big, super spectacular episode where everybody can fight over them. It's going to be a lot more controlled than the recent chaos of the regular 25 for 25. I'm very much looking forward to it. We have that on the books. Uh, I want to say, are there any things that we know we're looking forward to in the horror realm this month and possibly beyond? I know theatrically, it seems like the most high profile thing we have is Black Phone 2 in a couple weeks, which I
Which,
am very excited for
all right, all right.
because it looks like a very interesting genre sh- pivot. Uh, and it looks like I've been saying for years, like we need to bring back Nightmare on Elm Street in some capacity, or at
and that's
least the
kind. You're
concept,
kind of
just
getting that.
rip it. And so Scott Derrickson found a way to do it. Uh, it is Derrickson actually doing it, right?
I think so.
I
I
was
think
very disappointed by the Gorge, bud. So I need you to get back to here. And the
yeah, that was
trailer,
a rock solid 5 out of 10.
yeah, the trailer is giving me not only Black Phone vibes, obviously, but a little bit more back into the sinister territory, which is one of my faves. So I am very much looking forward to that.
It is
But
Derrickson again.
hell yeah.
Um, I'm looking right now. I mean, Frankenstein's going to be hitting theaters
Again,
soon.
I don't know. I don't know why I guess it's Netflix in November, or maybe there's going to be
It's October for theatrical, and
theatrical
then
screenings in
November.
a couple places. So presumably I'll be able to catch it in theaters. But yes,
Shelby Oaks is around the corner.
which I have heard very, very mixed things on. So I don't know if I'll be. I believe right now Bone Lake just opened. I have not. Have you heard anything about this?
I've been seeing it kind of pop up here and there. Not seeing it on the October release as of right now, as I'm just trying to
You
pull
know what
something
I'm.
up.
You know what I'm kind of holding out for.
The Hand That Rocks the Cradle remake with Micah Monroe and Elizabeth.
Well, I will be watching that, but like I don't know if you remember, but last year, a movie that actually I think ended up making my list called Milk and Cereal.
Oh, which
I'm
is
I'm
underrated.
ho- I'm
Watch.
hoping for something along those lines. Something in the YouTube in the online space that just kind of comes in and like surprise the hell out of everybody. Whether it's a short or something like more fully formed, but that has the more I have kind of directed my attention to like you know the liminal space, backrooms, phenomenon, all of that sort of
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and some of these online subcultures and everything. Uh, I've found some of the creepier stuff I've seen in recent memory has been on the internet specifically. So I'm always kind of hoping for like, what's the weird thing I'm not gonna see coming or whatever that's all of a sudden gonna pop up and go viral and like that's gonna be the scariest thing I see all month. So I'm looking out for that. I'll let you know.
We also
Uh,
get VHS Halloween will hit Shutter
Excuse me. It's out right
today.
now. It's out
Today.
today. We're recording this. Perfect way to wrap up. That is what we'll be watching. We'll definitely have new review of that and Black Phone 2 at some point, probably in the openers to our future episodes. We're definitely doing 25 for 25 horror. Let us know if you have any suggestions. I'll also ask when we post this episode. Should we tackle another subgenre? Do you guys want another list? But we've got another week or two of programming while we're still in October, and we're open to suggestions. What let us know. Let
Let
us
us
know
know.
what you think we should discuss. What are you curious about? What What are you guys exploring for your individual marathons? We always want to know, and nobody ever lets us know. I ask this every year, guys. Every year. Anybody want to let me know what you're watching? Just let us know. thearkofe@gmail.com. It'd be nice to hear from you. My name's Noah. It's been a pleasure. I've been here with the wonderful Sunshine Mayfield. Uh,
It's been
dude,
good to be here. Excited to
all,
be back for a
always a
little bit.
pleasure, dude.
My wife
I
goes, "Why are you hanging out with Noah so much virtually?" And I said, "It's October."
yeah.
So just
Sorry. Give us our 30 days.
yeah.
It's about to get very, very hectic, but I wouldn't have it any other way. About to hit the local haunted house soon. Got my birthday weekend coming up in Asheville, going to a concert. And of course, Gavin's getting married in like 3 weeks. So we got that going
Oh,
on too.
fantastic.
So, uh, yeah, until next time. I don't know what it'll be, but it will be definitely be spooky. I can tell you that much. Uh, for the Ark of E podcast, I have been Noah. This has been Alex, and we've been screaming about the. Oh God, I lost it. I was trying. How do we get to Giallo? We've been. Come on.
I don't know, bathing in neon. I got nothing.
We've been putting on the gloves.
There you go.
Okay. Don't forget your black leather gloves. I don't know. Okay. Uh, yes, until next time, I've been Antonio Margheriti. Uh, and he's been Dominic the Coco. And this has been uh, two, two white guys exploring Giallo. And apologies to any Italians who were offended by any
Mispronunciations.
of those mispronunciations or attempts at accents. They were all done in jest. And yeah, let's get out of here. We love you all. Have a spooky evening.